It's unbelievable. People, if they knew there might be an alternative that actually works, and they talk to all these people, I want to do what that other guy did. What did you do? I want to do what you did. I don't want to go to this guy and have him hack me apart and burn and poison me. It's only common sense. And eventually the word is going to get out and the change is going to come from the people. It ain't coming from the top medical schools or the top government granting agencies. It's going to come from the people wanting to live and wanting to feel good. And just tell me what I need to do. Now, there are people who don't want to do. Oh, no, I can't give up Hershey bars. I can't give up the beer and the pretzels.
Their choice.
That's their choice.
Yeah.
That's absolutely their choice.
Yeah.
But I said, if other people would like to give it up, I like beer and pretzels too. But if I had cancer, I would not eat beer and I would stop doing that.
You inspire me to be the higher me. You're my inspiration to creation.
שלום לכולם וברוכים הבאים לפודקאסט השראה להבראה. Welcome to my podcast Inspire to be higher.
Deep within, let your dreams begin.
Welcome everyone to the Inspire to be Higher podcast. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today. He's Professor Tомас Seyfried. He's a professor of biology, genetics, and biochemistry at Boston College. He received his PhD from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. His postdoctoral fellowship studies were in the Department of Neurology at the Yale University School of Medicine, where he also served as an assistant professor in neurology. He sits on several editorial boards, including those for nutrition and metabolism, neurochemical research, and the Journal of Lipid Research, and the ASN Neuro, where he is the senior editor. Dr. Seyfried has over 150 peer-reviewed publications and is the author of the book Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, on the origin, management, and prevention of cancer. I appreciate your being here.
Well, thank you very much, Shira. It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
And I want to explain quickly to our audience why you are one of the most influential figures in the field of the metabolic approach to cancer, and in my eyes, a hero. In the 1920s, Nobel Prize winner Otto Warburg, a prominent biochemist and physiologist, published his groundbreaking research on cancer metabolism, which led to what we now call the Warburg effect. He observed that cancer cells prefer to generate energy through a less efficient process called glycolysis, even when oxygen is available. It is a tragedy that for almost a century, Warburg's observations were overlooked by the scientific community as cancer research shifted its focus towards genetic mutations. Professor Seyfried's book, Cancer as a Metabolic Disease, published in 2012, played a pivotal role in bringing the metabolic approach to cancer back into the spotlight, highlighting the importance of mitochondrial function and offering new avenues for treatment. So your research is a huge gift to humanity. It is a rare thing to see someone from within the scientific community bravely going against it or, trying to steer it back to the right course. So for those who are unfamiliar with your work, can you explain the basic premise of cancer as a metabolic disease?
Yes, well, thank you very much. In your opening remarks, you're absolutely correct. It was Otto Warburg, the German Jewish scientist, spared by Hitler from the gas chambers, mainly because Hitler was fearing cancer and knew that Warburg, if anybody on the planet could resolve this cancer, it would be Otto Warburg. So there was a genuine interest in keeping him alive. He was no fan of Adolf Hitler. He despised him, he ridiculed, and more or less ignored what he was saying, and continued to do his research in Berlin, during the Second World War. When the Russians came back to Berlin, they kind of disassembled Warburg's laboratory, took a lot of his equipment. Even Warburg was arrogant to the Russians who came in, telling the Russians, like, do you know who I am? Why are you taking my research equipment? But the issue, of course, is Warburg absolutely identified the origin of cancer as a mitochondrial metabolic problem. But there were detractors and naysayers, which is what we do in the scientific field. We challenge and we attack other findings, and then we see how many experiments either support or do not support the general concepts. And in Otto Warburg's case, in fact, I'm working on a major paper right now showing how Warburg was absolutely correct and where he made errors in his data, and how we're now correcting that and bringing, as you've mentioned, bringing the entire field back on the right track, which will eventually lead to the non-toxic management of cancer. Warburg had, he was a rigid quantification biochemist, measurements, quantification, and quantification. And then as the result of that, he did make some errors. He thought that every mole of oxygen consumed would produce 7 moles of ATP energy. He also, and that was based on, that assumption was based on the work of Hans Krebs, a very famous also biochemist and Nobel Prize winner who worked in Warburg's lab. And Krebs had done a lot of work in biochemistry. And Warburg used Krebs' data to assume what I just said, the 1:7 ratio. He also used lactic acid as a quantitative marker for the production of ATP through glycolysis in the cytoplasm. We now, through our research here at Boston College and the work of others, have now shown that oxygen consumption in cancer is not used for much ATP. So this was, his assumption was incorrect. We cannot measure the amount of energy from oxidative phosphorylation by how many moles of oxygen are consumed in cancer cells. And Warburg based it on studies of normal tissues and cells, and then assumed the same thing was happening in the cancer. And we have shown, no, it's not the same thing that happens in cancer. So this led to a tremendous amount of controversy in the field of biochemistry by other Nobel Prize. There was a lot of action going on here at this time. And now he assumed that this lactic acid, we cannot even use lactic acid as an estimation of how much ATP is coming through the glycolytic pathway. And we've cleared that up too. So was Warburg correct? He was absolutely correct. Why was he thrown under the bus? Because some of the calculations didn't match up. Sidney Winehouse said, oh, cancer cells take in as much oxygen as normal cells, therefore they cannot have damage to oxidative phosphorylation. And everybody said yes, because they all believed that oxygen consumption was linked to ATP production. And that's not true. We have clearly shown that is not the case. So there was, even by the leaders in the field of biochemistry at that time, were not certain. Neither Warburg nor his detractors or attackers were clear about these measurements. We have now cleared this up. We now know it is not possible to accurately estimate how much energy can be coming from the various sources. We have also, with my work with Christos Xenopoulos from Semmelweis University, have shown that there is a third form of energy that neither Warburg nor anyone, and to this day, knows. Mitochondria can also produce energy through fermentation, which is a non-oxidant. Here's the organelle that generates energy from oxygen. But when it's inefficient, it can also generate energy from amino acid fermentation. It's unbelievable. So now we know, we're coming to a much more clear understanding of how cancer cells get energy. And Warburg was right. Without energy, All other issues make no sense and shouldn't be, we should waste time on this. All the gene mutations and all this genetic stuff, forget about it. Without energy, these cancer cells can't grow. So the focus of managing cancer is how do cancer cells get energy for their dysregulated growth? That is the central issue for cancer. And once you know that they can't use oxygen effectively, they must ferment. What are the fermentation fuels? One is glucose, and now the other one is the fermentation of the amino acid glutamine. That's it. We interrogated these tumor cells, and we can't find anything other than these two fuels that together, as a synergy, drive the dysregulated growth of the tumor. Now you know this, and you can't use fatty acids or ketone bodies. They die. So we now know how to manage cancer. You simultaneously take away the two fermentable fuels while transitioning the body over to fatty acids and ketone bodies. The cancer cells up and die on it. And the normal body attacks the tumor and uses the fuel from the tumor for the rest of the body. Unbelievable. Not that complicated.
No.
It's not that.
So how do you explain that it's not the breaking news in every edition, and how do you explain that it's not mainstream oncology?
Well, it's what we call ideology. Science and religion are not always that different. Religion takes the brain, I don't care what kind of religion it is, and makes it think a certain way. And you cannot change the way the brain thinks after it's been indoctrinated. When you have been led to believe for decades and decades that cancer is a genetic disease, and it's in all the textbooks of biology, biochemistry, and cell biology, and professors at all the major universities teach cancer as a genetic disease, the drugs, the new pharmaceutical drugs are all based on the somatic mutation theory. The academic industry thinks cancer is a genetic disease. The hospitals are making money on drugs based on the somatic mutation theory. The pharmaceutical companies are basing on this. And then you come along and say this whole thing is upside down, doesn't work. And we have 1,700 people a day dying from cancer, about 70 an hour. It's a worldwide epidemic. And yet they persist and persist and persist based on an incorrect theory. But the theory has been ingrained. It's an ideological dogma. So you can't break the brain to think that this is something other than what you were educated to think it was. And that explains why they're not broadcasting this all over the world, because people look at it and say, oh, he's wrong. It's a genetic disease. Everybody knows that. I got all these 100 books here telling me that. I was trained from high school to college to medicine. In the medical schools, they tell everybody it's a genetic disease. So the oncologists are trained to use immunotherapies or these other things that are based on the somatic mutation theory. And if the theory is incorrect, the outcome will never be optimal. Yes, some people survive. Yes, some people do well, but the majority, we have too many people dying and suffering immensely as the result of an incorrect theory and a misunderstanding of the nature of what the problem is. That's it. That's it in a nutshell.
It's very sad, and they don't bother reading your papers. And as I've told in the beginning, you have such a record, but
they don't read, right?
Deaf ears. So
no. Let me tell you another story that's very interesting. I have a paper published on the origin of metastatic cancer, and it's a highly, highly cited paper. Okay, so over 1,300 citations to this paper that I wrote. Then I said, wow, this is really exciting. Are people really reading? So in that paper, I have one sentence that says metastatic cancer is responsible for the majority of people dying from cancer. So they cite my paper only because of that one sentence. And then when I go look at what they wrote, it has absolutely nothing to do with what I wrote in my paper, just the opposite. So what does that tell me? That tells me that many scientists themselves don't even read the scientific literature, much less the layperson.
Yes, exactly.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. But okay, so let's leave it that. But let's say, what would be the outcome if patients were treated in the metabolic approach? What are the percentages? What, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, it's going to be very, very high because we already see this in the folks that are doing it now. We're collecting a registry of mostly stage 4 cancer patients, terminal illnesses, and this kind of thing, and they're still alive. Now, metabolic therapy, we're not claiming that metabolic therapy can cure cancer, because you get these crazy people out there saying, "Oh, Seyfried has a cure for cancer." No, no. What we have is an effective management, a management for cancer based on the scientific evidence for what the nature of the disease is. If someone were to get complete resolution, that's wonderful. But we have many people who continue to have their cancer, but they're living with it. It's become indolent rather than malignant. Are they cured? No. But are they alive with a good quality of life? Yes. Okay, well, what's wrong with that? What is wrong with a longer life and a higher quality of life, but I still have cancer? Oh, well, you didn't cure it, therefore you're not. Well, neither are the other guy. We're getting 1,700 people a day. They're not. How's their track record? And then if you survive using standard toxic poisons and surgical mutilations, I mean, your life, the quality of life is significantly reduced for a lot of the so-called cancer survivors. And even they said, well, I'm cured. My cancer went away completely, but now I have all hormonal balances. I have neuropsychiatric problem, gut problems. I have all these problems,
Yes.
making my life more difficult. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, oh, another explosion of cancer comes back. So there's no guarantee for cure on any approach that we're doing today. What we're saying, though, is that we are of the opinion, based on the hard science of what the nature of the disease is, that we can more effectively manage this disorder than can the current standards of care. That's what we know, because it's based on the correct theory of what the nature of the cancer problem is, and not an incorrect theory. So when patients come in, I'm not a physician, so I can't treat anybody. But what we do is design plans that would work if they were to be done in a clinic that could use these procedures. And one of the things that really upsets me is that many oncologists would love to be able to treat their patients with metabolic therapy, but they're restricted by the system from not doing this. So they will lose their license or be ostracized from their group if they would do anything other than the edict, the worldwide edict of what everybody must do. And I find that remarkable, because India, Korea, Japan, China, United States, all over the world, they do the same stupid thing over and over again. It's like, what the hell? How can the whole world be lockstep into an incorrect approach to managing cancer?
Yeah.
How can we figure that out? Anyway, when people come in who are diagnosed with cancer, you know, a lump, blood, some sort of a disturbance or whatever, you say you do some tests. You see that MRI, CAT scan, PET scan, this kind of stuff. Oh yeah, you have something there. We don't encourage biopsy, because biopsy could actually spread the tumor around. And many scientific publications on this that people also don't read.
Exactly.
We would like to know that there is a problem, and we would like to do it non-invasively. Also, when we do a very comprehensive blood work on patients that are first diagnosed with cancer, we find that many of the blood parameters are out of what we call the healthy zone. So we need to bring that entire blood panel back into a healthy zone. And generally, we start, my colleagues start with a 0 carbohydrate diet, bringing us back more to how our biological ancestors, how our human beings existed in the Paleolithic period of our existence on the planet. We are a species about 1.5 million years thereabouts, and most of the time that we existed on the planet, we were in a Paleolithic state, hunter-gatherers with minimal carbohydrates, no processed carbohydrates in our diet. So we would bring the patient back slowly to a Paleolithic state, and we use the glucose ketone index calculator to know that. And as we do this, because breaking the addiction to glucose in anyone's society, I don't care what your culture is, you're eating a lot of carbs. It's like an addiction, and you have to slowly break the addiction. Then you can move into water-only fasting for a couple of days. And then the patients start to get healthier and healthier. They feel better. Some with type 2 diabetes, you can see that becoming better managed, hypertension, high blood pressure. And then when we get the patients into this low Paleolithic nutritional ketosis, we come in with drugs that target the glutamine, because glutamine is an essential amino acid. It's not considered essential, but for cancer, it is absolutely essential. It's also important for our immune system and for the health of our gut. So we know that glutamine makes us healthy. But we also know that the tumor cells are using that same fuel to grow together with glucose. So we have to be very careful on how we target the glutamine. It's easy to bring glucose down because it's non-essential. We can bring glucose way, way, way down with diet. Diet and lifestyle, exercise and diet can bring glucose down. Exercise will also bring glutamine down, but not enough. So then we bring in parasite medications and things like this. Turns out parasites and cancer cells use common pathways to get energy. So cheap-ass parasite drugs together with a state of nutritional ketosis starts to hammer away at these cancer cells. And then we have to back off, and we allow our immune system to come in and clean up the corpses and clean up the microenvironment. And then we do it again, boom. Now, the immune system backs off. It's very interesting. You have to know how you play all the different organ systems and cellular systems of your body against the cancer. The body is a remarkable healing machine. It's unbelievable how your body can heal. But you've got to give the body the opportunity to heal, and you have to know how to use your immune system as a major hammer to blast the hell out of these tumor cells. But if you're too aggressive, you're going to paralyze the hammer. The hammer will not work. So you have to use that, let the hammer go, and you hold the glucose, let the immune system pick up the corpses, pull it back, hit the glutamine, kill the cancer cells, come back, let the immune system pick it up. All of a sudden you come back, you go, whoa, what happened to my diabetes? What happened to my obesity? What happened to my cancer?
I love this description. It's the best.
Well, but I'm just distilling down decades and decades of hard physiology and biochemistry experiments.
Yes.
So the common guy on the street knows what to do.
Yes.
You know, the problem, I wish the oncologists would know how to do that. They seem to be locked into the somatic mutation theory. What mutations do your cancer cells have? You know, oh, this mutation, it's irrelevant. If they don't have energy, it doesn't make any difference what kind of gene. Genes can't work without energy. Gene expression activity, if you don't have the fuel, the cell will die. It's just that simple. So you don't have to worry about all that other stuff. And that's what makes cancer so complicated. They study things that are largely irrelevant to the nature of the problem, making it seem like it's 100 different diseases, many different, it's one darn disease, all of them. We found that breast cancer, colon cancer, brain cancer, bladder cancer, all the different cancers, all the blood cancers, they're all dependent on glucose and glutamine, and they can't burn fatty acids or ketone bodies. Now you tell me, is that complicated? No, it's not that complicated. But then that's why nobody can believe it. They can't believe that you could take this incredibly complicated, devastating disease and dumb it down to something that you could absolutely manage. Wow. That's the challenge right there.
Yes, amazing. So I just want to, since you brought up the glutamine issue, some are confusing methionine restriction with targeting glutamine. So regarding methionine restriction, first of all, explain the difference, and also carnivore diet is not really the right diet for cancer patients if you consider keto is better if you consider the methionine restriction aspect. What do you think? What do you think of that statement?
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. When we interrogate it, listen to this. When we interrogate, what we do, let me tell you what we do. We take cancer cells and we grow them in salt solution, okay? And they don't live, right? Obviously, you're taking cells and you're growing them in a salt solution, and then you take your stopwatch and you time how long it takes for all the cancer cells to die, because there's nothing in there, right? And we do that with mouse cell lines, and we do it with human cell lines. Even without energy, human cells can live longer than a mouse cell. And that's because the basal metabolic rate, which is intrinsic action of the mitochondria and the physiology of the two different species. Don't forget, a mouse has a lifespan of about 2.5 years, where the humans can live into their 80s and 90s. So this is a difference in basal metabolic rate. So when I take the fuel away from a mouse cell, it dies in 12 to 24 hours, it's dead. With a human cell, it could be 24, 36 hours before it's dead without any fuel, okay? Then we add stuff back. We add fuels back. So we have 20 different amino acids, methionine and glutamate and cysteine and the whole bunch of them. And we add things back. And then we find out what do they need. And we find that glutamine is the most powerful of all the amino acids. What we found with methionine is it kills the tumor cells. Methionine has a sulfur-containing amino acid. So methionine kills. These diets, they say restrict methionine. I don't know what to say about that, because you're restricting an amino acid that actually kills tumor cells. So why would you want to restrict methionine? That makes no sense to me, based on our interrogation of what amino acids are doing. So you have to, don't forget, in the whole body, you have all the systems working together. When I'm interrogating the cells, I'm just asking what fuels can maintain the life and growth of a tumor cell, okay? So we're finding that only the sugar glucose and predominantly glutamine can do this. A little bit of glutamate, but glutamate is made from glutamine. There's a little bit of asparagine, but cysteine and methionine, the two sulfur-containing amino acids, kill the tumor cells. So I'm always wondering why they always have a methionine lower diet. For Christ's sake, I'd add the damn methionine to the diet. Might kill the tumor cells better. So again, we interrogate the tumor cells, torture, and we torture the damn cells. We try to figure out what in the hell they need to survive. And when you go through all the fuels, it's glucose and glutamine. We can't find anything else that will keep these cells alive. Okay, if those are the two fuels, what happens in the human and the mouse when we simultaneously target glucose and glutamine? We blast the crap out of these tumor cells, even in the body. Well, that's proving what these things they absolutely need. Now, that's what we do, because we're interested in one thing. How do we kill cancer cells without harming the rest of the body? And we know that ketones and fatty acids, ketones are a powerful fuel for normal cells. Why? Because we evolved in the Paleolithic period when we were always in ketosis. So we have to go back and think about our evolutionary past. Was cancer prevalent during Paleolithic periods? And the answer is no. How do we know that? No one was back then. We didn't have, we can't go back to great-grandpa and ask.
The indigenous cultures.
Yeah, indigenous cultures that, physicians and scientists were unable to find cancer as a major problem in indigenous cultures who live according to their traditional ways. So clearly, cancer is not a part of our existence. So our Paleolithic ancestors predominantly died from injuries and infections, not from chronic diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, dementia, this kind of stuff. They were dying from injuries and infections. Okay, we have stopped infections with antibiotics. That was one of the great advances in the history of medicine. All right. So if our ancestors had antibiotics back then, they wouldn't have been dying so much from various diseases and infections or injury. Now we have all these wonderful hip replacement, knee replacements, shoulder replacements. So we can fix a lot of the broken bones. Yet we're now, most of us are dying from chronic diseases, from the advancement of our technology in food science and agriculture and in conveniences of every kind. We don't have the same exercise. We're eating highly processed foods. We're under tremendous emotional stress. We have bad sleep. We have all the things that create cancer that our Paleolithic ancestors did not have to deal with. They had to deal with infections and injuries. Now we're dealing with bad food, no exercise, bad sleep.
Radiation, Wi-Fi, no exposure
Yes,
to the sun,
yes.
light.
I mean, and we have a worldwide obesity epidemic. And I always tell people in many of these podcasts, people say, well, I don't believe in it, or I don't understand evolution. Do you understand we have a lot of fat people walking around? Okay, where do you think they came from? Oh, we evolved over tens of thousands of years to store energy. We were always a starved species. We didn't have highly processed. So we're geared. Our bodies evolved to store energy in the form of sugar. Carbohydrates store fat. Now we're in an environment with tons of carbohydrates, and it's obvious we're many fat people. All right, that's evolution in action. There it is. You want to see biological evolution? It's the obesity epidemic right there. And that's because we evolved as a starved species over hundreds of thousands of years to store energy. We rarely had carbohydrates in our diet. Maybe some tubers, maybe a fruit during the season, some berries or something like this. Most of us were killing and eating animals. We weren't eating grass and leaves. We were killing, eating big animals for our own species. So don't forget, humans are omnivores. They can eat anything. Anything that walks, flies, swims on this planet, humans can eat it. It was only cultural things that said, oh, I got to be a vegan or I got to be a carnivore, this kind of thing. This is all nuts. We're omnivores. Now, the issue, of course, to manage cancer, any diet that would lower blood sugar and elevate ketones, whether it's a carnivore diet, a pescatarian diet, a vegan diet, vegetarian, I don't know, Mediterranean diet, whatever the hell you want to call it. And with the glucose ketone index, you can determine what you can and cannot eat. If you're a carnivore, oh, what does that mean? Okay, you have a dollop of meat, a little piece of meat once every other day. Whoa, I can't do that. Well, that's what you call a carnivore diet. If you're a vegetarian, you eat a bunch of plants and see what it does to your GKI, your glucose ketone index. I mean, so people then learn right away what they can and cannot eat. And then they know how much they have to eat, what they can eat. You get into the low GKI, and then you come in with the glutamine targeting drugs. And if some guy say, oh, I'm a vegetarian, I can't eat a piece of meat. Okay, chew on these leaves and see you get your GKI down. Yeah. I mean, it's all biochemistry, man. It's all biology and biochemistry. Our bodies are a machine, and we have to know that we can adjust the machine by looking at these numbers. And low glucose, elevated ketones, you're in the Paleolithic zone now. Now, this is the way our ancestors were that didn't have cancer. And now we're going to come in and get rid of this cancer by hammering the glutamine. And eating meat will not, we already have glutamine is the highest amino acid in our body. Chewing on a piece of meat or a vegetable ain't going to move that needle much. You got to use the drug to pull it down. Just like I said, it's a press pulse strategic attack on the glutamine. All this stuff is absolutely, it works beautifully if people know what to do and how to do it. The problem is most people don't know what to do. They don't understand evolutionary biology. They're not familiar with their physiology. They're not scientifically literate. And that's not only the patients, it's also the caregivers as well.
Yes,
the whole package is all there together. And what do we have? Cancer epidemic, cardiovascular epidemic, obesity epidemic, type 2 diabetes epidemic, all these things. And people want quick fixes. They say, whoa, you mean you have to go back and live like some Paleolithic guy? Can I take this pill? Yeah, the pharmaceutical companies come at you with all these pills, makes everything easy. They take all these pills, you got adverse effects from taking the pills and not doing what you should be doing. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. We're a wonderful species.
Yes, wonderful species. So tell me, speaking of toxic things that they prefer to use, please explain why you recommend eliminating radiation for brain tumors specifically, and in general, what I mean, there is more edema, more. Tell us the findings.
Yeah, well, this again comes back to what's going on. You have to realize for brain cancer, glioblastoma, many brain tumors for that matter, we have not made one single advance in improving overall survival in 100 years. Think about that. I always tell people in these big lectures, 100 years ago, 1925, and now it's 2024, okay, 99 years ago. Let's just call it 100 years.
Next year.
Your chances of survival with a glioblastoma were 8 to 14 months. Today in 2024, it's 8 to 17 months. Jesus. Oh, look at that. We made a 2-month advance in 100 years. I mean, give me a break. So why are we making no advance in glioblastoma? And it comes to the idea that when the tumor is growing in your brain, it's feeding upon glucose and glutamine. We know that. So what a person does is they get diagnosed with a glioblastoma, and of course, immediately they're rushed in to have it cut out and it debulked. And in some cases, that's absolutely crucial. It depends if it's pressing against one of it could cause herniation and it kill the patient very quickly. So, but sometimes you have a watchful waiting period. And when you have the watchful waiting period, we can shrink it down using metabolic therapy, and then the neurosurgeon can come in and take out a much greater amount of the tumor. But we go in, and almost everybody, regardless of the situation, we debulk it right away, creating a beautiful wound, which then brings in a large amount of glucose and glutamine, because you give the patient a lot of steroids that reduce the edema, and steroids make your blood sugar go high. And when the blood sugar goes high, the brain sucks that sugar in and feeds the cancer cells. And also, you break apart the glutamine-glutamate cycle in the brain, which is a communication between the neurons that deliver signaling and the glial cells that maintain the microenvironment. And you break apart that, freeing up a large amount of glutamate, an excitatory neurotransmitter, which is taken up by the normal glial cells and the tumor cells and converted back into glutamine, the second major fuel for the tumor. So when you irradiate somebody's brain, you're not only elevating blood sugar by the radiation itself, but you're giving steroids to reduce the edema, which makes the sugar go even higher. And then you're breaking apart the glutamine-glutamate cycle, creating a wealth of glutamine. The two fuels that are driving the dysregulated growth of the tumor are created in abundance by the very treatment you're giving to the patient. And this explains why almost no one, very few, less than 5% of glioblastoma patients survive beyond 5 years. Most of them are dead within a year or two because of the treatment. The treatment is killing these poor patients. I told many, many physicians, oncologists, radiation oncologists, this is why your patients aren't surviving. And they say, but that's the only thing we can do. We're trained to do that. We're not trained to do anything else. If we don't do that, and I said, you haven't made any progress in 100 years, for Christ's sake. I says, and you continue to do this. I said, this is, if you know, well, I didn't know that. Okay, so that's negligence. You didn't know it, but now I'm telling you it. Now I'm giving you the exact reason why your patients aren't surviving, and the biochemical and physiological explanation for this. Now you do know it. Now, if you continue to irradiate your patients, knowing what I told you, that's immoral. You're dealing with a moral question here. Right? That's right. You should be, that's malpractice.
Yes.
Okay. So you can't deny what I'm telling you. The evidence is strikingly clear. Every country that does the standard of care for glioblastoma gets the same result over and over again for 100 years. And you come along, tell somebody don't do that, and they say, no, we have to do this. What is that?
They have a boss. They have a boss, the pharma.
Yeah, but it's not whether pharma, it's moral issue. Right?
Of course.
It's medical malpractice. It's a moral issue. I told you why you're killing your patients and you continue to do it. I don't believe you. What part of the biochemistry do you not believe? Show me a glioblastoma cell that can live without glucose and glutamine. And they can't. What I'm telling you is the truth. It's the truth based on hard biochemical knowledge of what's going on. And then you say, why all the glioblastoma patients are dying? If you look at the survival curves across the world, they're all the same. Nobody's surviving. It's perfectly clear. And then when you tell them, oh, I have to do that. The system tells me I have to do that. You have to do it. The system told you that you have to do it. I've heard those kinds of statements before. I've heard people doing shit just because the system tells them to do it. They have a rational mind of their own. Can't they make their own decisions about, I will lose my license and lose my job? Doing this is to people makes a very good salary for me. Hospital makes a lot of money. All this kind of stuff. So now that's for brain cancer. I think radiation and some of these treatments in measured amounts could be effective for possibly other types of cancer. I'm just throwing it out for glioblastoma, that's for sure.
Yes.
But not for others. As I told people over and over again, we already have all of the tools in our tool chest to manage cancer effectively. Even some of the immunotherapies, you would use them as a final stage for killing off a few cells that may not be resistant to metabolic therapy. A radiation for a small little lesion that you can't really cut out with a surgical procedure. All of these things, but all the patients should be in a state of therapeutic ketosis, regardless of what you're going to do to them. And you can cut, my colleagues at Istanbul, Turkey, could cut down the dosages of chemotherapy by more than a half if the patient is in nutritional ketosis and still get the benefit with a lower toxicity. We know what to do and how to do it. We could transform this cancer thing in a short period of time. I'm telling you, we can drop the death rate. I've been saying it. If you know what to do in 5 years, 10 years, you're going to drop 50% of the death rate will be dropped. So what's standing in the way? Why are we not doing what I'm saying? I have all the science. I have all the evidence.
Yes, yes.
It's not there.
It's not there. So I want to go into another issue that is similar. In 2013, you published a groundbreaking study on the effects of ketogenic diet combined with hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which demonstrated prolonged survival in mice with systemic metastatic cancer. And also, Dr. D'Agostino is also highlighting the benefits of hyperbaric oxygen treatment when paired with ketogenic diet for cancer therapy. I understand that particularly for GBM patients, hyperbaric oxygen therapy combined with fasting and therapeutic ketosis is recommended for treating edema and also other things. Could you elaborate on your expertise and findings in this area? Because I find it so hard to convince oncologists and doctors to prescribe it to my patients and to just permit their going into the oxygen chamber.
Yeah. Well, Dominic and I worked on these papers with Angela Poff, a grad student in Dominic's lab. And Dominic is a world expert on hyperbaric oxygen therapy for a variety of different things. He works with different organizations to look at the mechanisms of therapeutic benefit for high pressure oxygen. Hyperbaric oxygen, so you can breathe 100% oxygen, and it saturates the erythrocytes for carrying oxygen. But when you breathe oxygen under pressure, the oxygen gets actually dissolved in the bloodstream. So for cancer, when we kill cancer, we kill mostly cancer by oxidative stress. Okay, one of the reasons why cancer cells survive, not because the glutamine and the glucose produce a powerful antioxidant capacity in the tumor cells. So the glucose carbons come through the pentose phosphate pathway to produce glutathione, and glutamate is one of the amino acids for glutathione, which comes from glutamine. And those two together have a very strong antioxidant protection of the tumor cell. Even though the tumor cell is producing reactive oxygen species, its powerful antioxidant system driven by glucose and glutamine is protecting the tumor cell. So how do we, so we know that if we can reduce the glucose and glutamine, oxidative stress will be greater on the tumor cell. So when you irradiate, you also have the high beam radiation hits oxygen molecular and causes a reactive radical that blows up cells next to it. But you'll blow up normal cells and tumor cells with radiation through an extracellular oxidative stress, sometimes intracellular oxidative stress. But when you put the patient in nutritional ketosis and then hyperbaric oxygen, now what you're doing is you're dissolving oxygen into the bloodstream, And you're pulling the plug on the antioxidant capacity of the tumor. And now the tumor will explode even better when you have the oxygen dissolved without the toxicity. So you're essentially killing the tumor cell the same way you would with all this other stuff, but you're doing it more elegantly to kill only the tumor cell and not cause any collateral damage in the microenvironment, which are getting ketones, which protect normal cells from oxidative stress. It's unbelievable. Once you understand the biology and biochemistry and the evolutionary concepts of what we're doing, all this stuff makes perfect sense and it will work beautifully. The problem is, and the great tragedy is, our oncology folks and physicians are never trained to know any of this stuff. They're not getting this training in medical school to know how we use the incredible healing capacity of our bodies, pushed the right way under the different conditions to solve these problems. Yes, hyperbaric oxygen, when you're in nutritional ketosis with a little glutamine targeting, you're talking about IV vitamin C doing the same thing, creating oxidative stress. You got to pull the plug on the antioxidant protection. The tumor cells are protected by an antioxidant shield driven by glucose and glutamine. You pull the glucose and glutamine away, now they're vulnerable to these kinds of, it's unbelievable, right?
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. So it can actually come instead of radiation. You can do these things that are benefiting the body instead of.
Yeah. And what we tell people is that your blood sugars and ketones go up during the course of a day. When you're some people in the morning, some people in the afternoon, when your body is in the lowest glucose ketone index, where glucose is low, ketones are high, your GKI, which we published to show people this, go into the hyperbaric chamber when you have the lowest GKI. And you could even take some glutamine targeting drug while you're in there. And
exogenous ketones and fasting and.
Yeah, all of these kinds of things. Yeah, and then you sit in the chamber when your body is in the most ideal condition for making those tumor cells vulnerable, and the rest of your body is getting super healthy.
Yeah.
So
it's a win-win.
But yeah, what's wrong with this picture?
A lot.
Yeah, it works. It works. That's the big problem.
Yes. The money issue is the problem.
Well, the money issue is a big one, and we're still waiting for the Israeli entrepreneurs. Somebody's got to figure out how to make a buck on this stuff.
Yes.
My job is not to make money on it. My job is to prove that it works. Every person that was told that they are terminal and they're living beyond, that's the reward that I get.
Yes.
You know, but I know there are people out there that should know how to make money on this stuff. But that's okay. My hat's off to those guys.
Yes.
My job is just to pound out the science for why all this stuff is absolutely the way you should go. If you can't but I agree. I think we have to have some revenue transfer. I think revenue has to be transferred from one source of treatments that don't work, that are toxic and predominantly don't work, are harmful, and to another form of treatment that actually does. I don't think people would be upset paying for something that actually worked.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest.
They just don't know it exists. That's the problem. So that's why
they don't know it exists, and they don't understand the science. They haven't been trained.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of obstacles in the way of
indoctrination that's been taking years and years.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that will happen because this is the future. People can either jump on board now, learn as quickly as they can, or get the hell out of the way, because you're allowing these poor cancer patients to die miserable deaths. And we can stop that, absolutely stop that, prolong longer life, higher quality of life, progression-free survival. We can do all this. But the problem is it's a combination of different approaches, which may differ from one person to the next based on their age, their gender, their overall health. People say, how come you have no clinical trials on this? Number one, nobody knows how to do it. Number two, our trials are based on keeping that person alive with a healthy, which we can adjust. It's not like do one thing and compare it to not doing that thing. It's a goal of keeping, how long can we keep a terminal cancer patient alive? That's our goal.
Yes.
We'll do whatever it takes to do that. And that I want to see a smile on the face of that person. I don't want to see him look like death warmed over, came out of a concentration camp or something like this. Those guys have a nice smile. They feel good about themselves. Oh, by the way, yeah, I got this cancer. It's there. It's a pain, but I'm dealing with it.
Yes.
So, this is the future. This is the future.
Dream. Yeah. So you and others are challenging scientific understanding through hard data, which is what you do. But that can take many years, especially since the system doesn't let patients get the right treatment in the right way like we want. So how long do you think it will take to prove it's efficient?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question. And I think the more anecdotes that we have that I publish, Brad and Maggie Jones are collecting a registry for their big movie documentary on us of the cancer revolution.
Yes.
They're collecting all these terminal patients, and they're all telling their story about what they did. Many of them are similar in what they did. Others are different. I mean, it's all based on a metabolic approach to the management. People want to live. They fear cancer more because of the toxic treatments than they do for the disease. They don't want their hair to fall out, their breasts cut off, their colons chopped out, half a lung. I mean, it's unbelievable. People, if they knew there might be an alternative that actually works, and they talk to all these people. I want to do what that other guy did. What did you do? I want to do what you did. I don't want to go to this guy and have him hack me apart and burn and poison me. It's only common sense. And eventually the word is going to get out and the change is going to come from the people. It ain't coming from the top medical schools or the top government granting agencies. It's going to come from the people wanting to live and wanting to feel good. And just tell me what I need to do, doc. Now, there are people who don't want to do. Oh, no, I can't give up Hershey bars. I can't give up the beer and the pretzels.
Yeah. Their choice.
That's their choice.
Yeah.
That's absolutely their choice.
Yeah.
But I said, if other people would like to give it up, I like beer and pretzels too. But if I had cancer, I would not eat beer and I would stop doing that.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, it's my choice, right?
Your choice.
Yeah.
But they are asking always, when they come to me at least, they're always saying, okay, but show me the papers, so show me the research. So please explain why it is impossible to do clinical trials in a system that is not ready for this kind of clinical trial.
Well, as I said, each person has to be judged as their own entity, and that's not fits the standard clinical trial pattern protocol, where you have a drug and a no drug or a placebo, and then you switch over. And we're looking at overall monitoring multiple biomarkers in the person, and we're moving that person together with targeting the tumor, and that requires a lot of participation on the part of the patient. The patient is ultimately responsible for their destiny. The caregiver should be working together with the patient as a team, and the two of them discuss how we're moving in the right direction, because everybody's different. This food may not be appropriate for the other guy. For cultural and religious reasons, you have to work within these parameters, and that could differ from one person to the next.
And gluten sensitivity and dairy sensitivity. Do you work with the SNPs? Do you do these tests? Single nucleotide polymorphism?
I don't do them myself. But I certainly think that there might be some utility for those kinds of things, because we need to know,
individualized. Yeah.
Yes, it has to be very individualized. Metabolic therapy is it's individual precision medicine. It's based on the individual themselves. So because we don't know, you're right about gluten this and this kind of allergy or that kind of thing, and we have to work within those parameters to manage the cancer as best we can. So there's a lot of basic information we need from each patient. And then we design the therapy around that patient. And we're learning all the time. When I get information back from the clinicians, I run my preclinical systems, modifying what we've heard from the clinic. And then we find things here in the preclinical system, dosage, timing, and scheduling. And I tell my friends in these clinics, you might want to consider this. So it's a feed forward feedback until we have this system perfected. We have to work on trial and error, dosage, timing, and scheduling until we can determine what is the best plan of action and how to modify that for gender, age, and these other kinds of cultural and religious differences. So we're working all the time on this. But right now, the bigger issue is, like you said, nobody even knows about that cancer is a mitochondrial metabolic disease. Much less, but we're moving ahead.
Yes.
Those guys will eventually catch up.
Yes.
They will eventually
take 20
catch up.
years, but they will catch up.
They will eventually come to know.
Yes.
Because what we're telling you is the future.
Yes.
This is the future of managing cancer and diabetes and these other things.
Exactly.
Eventually they're going to have to come. They can only deny the truth for so long.
Yes.
And then they're going to say, geez, I want to know about that. How come nobody told me about that? Well,
Exactly.
listen, we've been publishing these damn papers for years about this.
Yes, yes. Okay, so where can people find your work? How can they support it?
Well, right now, all of my work, the key papers for sure, most of them are in open access. Just put my name in, say, show me his publications. Okay, because there's a lot of things we don't have time to talk about a quarter of a century of research in a 1 hour time frame. So all those details are in those papers if people would like to read them. Okay, so and our work is supported predominantly from private foundations and philanthropy. We have folks that want to be part of this. And some of these guys don't care if they make a lot of money or not. They just say, "Oh, this stuff is what's going to happen. I just want to say I participated in the paradigm change," and they just said, "You can support me through the foundations or through the university, Boston College itself." People make very nice donations to us, and it goes to our preclinical cancer research program. And then we test dosage, timing, and scheduling. Always improving. How long can we keep these mice that were terminal alive? That's our thing. How long we keep mice alive with terminal cancer. And then we do the same thing to humans in the clinic.
Exactly. That's the dream. And
Yeah,
also there's the book, your book also.
The book, yeah, my book is selling more copies now than it's ever sold. People keep asking me, should I write a second edition to this because we have a lot of new stuff. But I'm still working. I have to clear up this Warburg thing, show where he was correct and where he was incorrect, but basically right. Basically, he understood. So we need to dust him off, and we need to bring his concepts back and show how we perfected what he originally showed, and how we have actually filled in the missing pieces on his idea of cancer. And now we have a much more clear picture of what we need to do to manage this disease based on the science. And the more funding we get, the more we perfect the science, the more we perfect dosage, timing, and scheduling, and the more that terminal cancer patients will no longer be terminal.
Beautiful. Your hands are full with the good stuff to do, so that's amazing. And 2 questions I always ask my guests. First is, what inspires you? And the second is, what inspiration do you hope to give to others in your work?
Well, I think what inspires me is that when we see science telling us that this is the way to kill cancer cells, and they can't recover, every time we do this and we keep a mouse alive to much longer, it's very inspirational. And then we go and see the humans. That's even more inspirational. Guys that do this, that are living. Now we have Pablo Kelly, a British guy, who has now 10 years survival with glioblastoma. He still has the tumor. It gets cut out every 2 or 3 years.
Yes.
But he's alive.
Yes.
He's got married and 2 children. He would have been dead years ago if he did standard of care. He rejected radiation, chemo, rejected all that stuff. So, and then we have breast cancer, colon cancer. I see these people. I'm always shocked. They call me up. I give them a lot of information. I don't hear from them for 2 or 3 years. All of a sudden I get a letter. Hey, I'm doing fine.
Yes.
You should have been dead. How come you're still alive?
Yes, amazing.
How do you feel? Oh, I feel good. I'm doing good. I said, well, that's the motivation. what the hell more do you want? You know, what you did kept somebody alive. That's a lot of power for that. And I think people should be encouraged to know that we have a plan, a clear plan for the future, to know that we can manage this disease and make it far less horrific than what we currently believe it to be. I don't see people going bald and bleeding from the mouth and all other orifices. I don't see that as the future. I see smiling faces, maybe a little bit discomfort because you got to start changing the ways, your traditional ways of doing things, your addiction to glucose and this kind of stuff, getting more exercise, get off your ass and get out and start working out a little bit more, doing the things that are going to keep you healthy. Then there's going to be a little bit, well, I don't really feel like, this kind of thing. But, bottom line, if you want to live, you better start recognizing this is going to keep you alive.
Yeah, and it's in your hands. That's the most.
It's absolutely. You're giving the power back to the patient.
Exactly.
The patient now is the participant. They just need to know what to do. Listen, if I had cancer, I have friends. Even though I'm the one who writes all the protocols, I still want to talk to the people that are in the clinic every day working with people. So I would be out there talking to some people that use my protocol to treat others.
Yes. Amen to that.
Yeah.
So I want to say, we're speaking of inspiration. You are an inspiration to me. I deeply appreciate your brilliant work and your commitment to the truth. And I hope more people will join you in this important endeavor. And
Well, they will if they want to live. They definitely will.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the interview. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you, for me too.
תודה שהייתם איתנו עד סוף הפרק. אני מקווה שמצאתם השראה בתוכן של היום. אם נהניתם, אני מבקשת שתשתפו את הפרק הזה אפילו רק עם בן אדם אחד. כך נוכל להפיץ יותר תקווה, ריפוי ושינוי חיובי בעולם. למידע נוסף אתם מוזמנים לבקר באתר שלי shiramed.com. תודה, וניפגש בפרק הבא.